It's getting hot in here.
So hot. That might be the intro. Welcome back to We Match Now What? Abby, Kyle, can't believe we're here right now.
I can't either.
So, what's new with you, babe?
What is new with me? Not much. We just came out of like a great week of weather, and now today it's gloomy and cloudy again.
It is, yeah. We are. What is it? Is this called? What's overcast?
This is overcast.
This is overcast, yeah. Right? Okay, yeah. I always heard that term, and I was like, I'm not quite sure I know what that means. So
that's fair. Yeah, no.
Now I have a point of reference.
Yeah.
This.
Yeah. Hopefully, we get some warmer weather.
Yep.
Soon.
So, what is our topic today?
Today, our topic is love. I said it like that, and I'm sticking with it.
Something's happening to my eyebrows right now. Can you see?
It's the love eyebrows.
Yeah. Yeah, so today our topic is love, as I take a sip of water. We've had a lot of conversations about love, and some of the ones we've had somewhat recently, we've, I guess, been going back and forth on whether or not we think it is...
Whether it's subjective or objective.
Yeah. So I was more on the side of it is subjective. Mm-hmm. And you were on the side of it being objective, and you actually had some references to back that point up, which I read, and I thought were actually really solid. You sent me one. It was like a chart that differentiated
it was
lust, love, and
obsession.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess my argument for it being objective was like the love column had like benchmarks or key things to look for, kind of like baseline expressions of the emotion.
Right.
Which so in my mind was like, oh, that kind of means it's objective. But I'll tell you another reason I thought it was objective. And it's because of the way it's viewed in your brain. The way the emotion is viewed, like when you experience the emotion, the same parts of your brain light up for everyone.
Right.
Also, even I read this thing recently, like even for dogs. Yeah.
So it's just on all the time for dogs because
they got so much love.
Yeah, my dogs.
They have so much love.
They have so much love. They can't get enough of it.
But like the interesting thing was like upon further research, because that answer that I gave was kind of based on like just my recollection of things I'd read and was taught.
So I guess we kind of came to the conclusion that it can be both.
It's actually both, yeah.
Subjective and objective.
There is subjective love and there's objective love.
Right.
And so objective love is, like the parts of your brain that are active, the neurotransmitters, the hormones, like those are all an objective, observable.
Happens in everybody.
Yeah.
And then the subjective side is more so how you interpret love.
How you like express it.
How you express it.
Yeah. And that can all be influenced by like your upbringing, know, how you saw love being expressed. And then also your culture, your, even like because of the language you speak, you might think of or see love differently because certain languages have like very specific words for love. Whereas like in North America, it's pretty much like about like 4 or 5 words. And all of those words even are just like, very different degrees of love. So it depends on a lot of things. And that's what makes it subjective.
Right. Now, for those of you who have watched some of our prior episodes to this one, we've mentioned how throughout our relationship, we'll sometimes have moments where, we'll have like a Q&A essentially with each other to ask questions a lot of the times it's like deeper questions about how we perceive our relationship.
Yeah, things that don't come up like naturally or organically in conversation, but we're still curious about it.
So shortly after I'd say we confessed our love to one another, we had one of these Q&A sessions where one of the questions, like I guess for this particular session was, what is love to us? Like how would we explain from our own perspective what we think love is?
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really great idea because not only did it, help us learn more about each other. And then once we kind of understood and read how each of us perceive love, you can almost like tweak and tune and adjust your own perception of love when it comes to the relationship, so that we were including each other.
Yeah.
So I think we should read what we wrote on that day. There was a contrast. It was different. And I thought that was like awesome, because just getting a different perspective on it and hearing what somebody else, especially the person that you're in a relationship with, has to say about it was really enlightening for me. I'm sure it was for you.
Yeah. And I like that because our answers were so different. That's another reason I loved that we did it.
Yeah.
Because while I don't think our definitions were like novel to each other, like I'm sure it's something we might have considered, but it's just not something we adopted as our main idea of love.
Right.
And that's important because like now, like going into the relationship, the way I loved you, or when I did things, this is kind of overlapping with the idea of love language, but when I did things for you that I thought showed my love,
right,
I'm going to assume that you understand that those were like expressions of love, but you might not.
That's a good point.
Because your perception or your perspective of it is different.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was glad we did it, because now I know better how to express my love to you.
Right.
And then also I can see your expressions of love. Like I recognize them better, knowing what your perspective is.
Yeah. And for anybody watching, I would challenge you, regardless of the situation you find yourself in, whether you're single, whether you're dating, whether you're in a relationship, get out your notes and your phone and maybe journal and write down what love is to you, or what you think love is, because I'm sure there's a wide variety of answers that will result from that question, right? So, Abby, would you like to go first?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure, what was the question that you asked? Was it just like, what does love mean to us, or what is...
I think the question actually was, because I have it here.
Okay.
The question was, how do you know when you're in love?
Okay.
Right? So
so it's very,
it's a bit different, but I think the answer, what is love, is within this for sure. Right?
Yeah. So I said, to me, being in love is caring more about the relationship and the other person just as much, if not more, than yourself, as well as what you get out of the relationship. While it's important to know you are benefiting from the relationship, that's separate from the love that you feel for the person. And it's not the main focus or the thing that you think about the most. In most cases, I will prioritize your happiness over my own, not at the expense of my happiness, but as a compromise. And because I'm in love with you, your happiness is my happiness. So theoretically, I won't be unhappy. And there will definitely be exceptions to this along the way, but that's speaking generally. Love is complicated, and I know sometimes it isn't enough in a relationship, because loving someone doesn't mean you're in what's best for you. I think the reason for that is, to some degree, you will rely on the other person for love and some of your happiness. And although no one else should ever be entirely responsible for your happiness, you do expect your significant other will contribute to your happiness the way you would try to contribute to theirs. So to me, being in love with you is wanting to be able to give you everything you want and need, and feeling safe in the idea that you would do the same for me. That made me emotional. I'm like really warm now.
Beautiful answer.
Thank you.
And I remember when we first exchanged answers back, like in, I think it was October, November-ish, maybe October.
Can I see actually?
November 25th. Your answer surprised me in the way that you like decided to take it.
Yeah. Even I felt the same way when I heard yours.
Yeah. Like, I mean, you'll see. I'll rewind in a second here, and you'll see the contrast, right? I wrote a lot more than that.
Yeah, that was another thing. I feel like the last time we did a Q&A, I feel like I had written slightly more.
Yes.
And so I was like, oh, like now I kind of know what the benchmark is, and so I wrote less. But then Kyle went off.
I did, yeah, because I mean, I guess I want to kind of dive into this a little bit before I give my answer. I feel like love in some relationships can be used as like a weapon, right? Or used to keep a toxic relationship together that shouldn't be together, right? You know, I remember listening to a audiobook that was called Love Is Not Enough. And that was something that I had heard before, that term, and never really understood like what that meant. Because I think if you asked me like 5 years ago, I would have probably said something like, oh, what? Yeah, as long as you have love, like, you know.
Love conquers all.
Love conquers all,
love,
right? But I think that's just giving into the fairy tale that the media and movies have kind of portrayed love to be. I think, like, in all actuality, I think love is more simple than that. Well, I'll get to my answer because I'm starting to.
You're giving it away. Anyway.
Starting to give it away, so I'll get into it. So to reiterate, the question that we gave to each other was, how do you know when you're in love? So I said, to answer this question, I think it's important to define what I think love is and what it looks like to me. In some ways, I feel like love is very simple. In others, it can feel incredibly complex. Despite the varying degrees of love, I feel like it's most beneficial for our own peace of mind to focus on its simplicity rather than its complexity. In my opinion, love without action shouldn't exist. While telling somebody I love you is considered affirmation, the words alone mean nothing and sadly are abused in society to maintain connection with people. For example, in a toxic relationship, the words are used to manipulate emotions in order to justify shitty behaviors, which is something that I just mentioned. That may be considered love to some people, but that's not the type of love that I want. I choose to express love every day. Remember, I feel that it's better to simplify what love is. With that said, here are a few expressions I consider acts of love. Respect is an act of love. Showing gratitude is an act of love. Being polite is an act of love. Controlling your emotions is an act of love. Saying thank you, have a nice day to the drive-thru worker who gives you your food is an act of love. Opening or holding the door for somebody is an act of love. Tipping at a restaurant is an act of love. So circling back to the main question, how do I know I'm in love with you? Is it because you love me? Well, yes and no. While I think mutual acts of love are important to healthy relationships, if you stop showing me love, would I stop loving you? And the answer is an easy no, because that would make my love conditional on how I'm being treated. Instead, I would find out why you weren't showing me love and work on ways to rectify that before making any rash, emotional, driven decisions. This is unconditional love, which I believe is the only pure form of love. And yet it seems to be the hardest for people to understand or express. The fact is, I've been showing you love since the day we virtually met. From our Bumble and Instagram conversations to going on dates, I've been loving you since the beginning. A big part of me realizing I was in love with you was seeing how you respond to my love, how you love me, and how I respond to your love. Without conditions, without expectations. Add that together with physical attraction, compatibility, conversation, fluidity, aligned goals for the future, and probably 100 other things. Like I said before, I feel like love is respecting, and maintaining our respect for one another means a lot to me. When I verbally expressed being in love with you for the first time, that was me affirming that I'm happy with how we've been loving each other and that I want to continue loving each other in a committed relationship. As I mentioned before, I don't believe in soulmates, but I do believe in love. And I believe that giving and receiving love is the recipe for a great life. And I see you as somebody that I can continue to love for a lifetime. We challenge each other. We are there to support each other. We communicate very well with each other. These are all green flags for a loving relationship. And while I'm not naive enough to believe that we won't have our challenges in the future, based off the way we've been loving each other up until this point, I have faith that we can overcome any obstacles that may arise. In closing, finally, I believe that the media has jaded the masses' perception of true love. It's romanticized as this magical fairy tale-like experience that's unexplainable, and when it happens, you just know. This false narrative is why so many people stay single or hold out for the idea of the one. Unfortunately, this delusional ideology is much easier to latch onto rather than taking accountability and putting in work to make yourself more capable of loving and being loved unconditionally. Society needs to learn what healthy unconditional love looks like and why it's critical to building and maintaining relationships, because it seems like a lot of people haven't a damn clue. That was a pretty emotionally driven.
Yeah.
There was like a lot of emotion in there. And a lot of that was like from, observation on like dating culture and modern dating and relationships, my own experiences, and then obviously like our relationship. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna suggest a TLDR for that, but I think it's too long for a TLDR. I don't know how I would shorten that up. I think all those points were, clearly important to me.
I mean, one of the points of this podcast was like anecdotal references or.
Yeah. So like, that's just my take on it.
Yeah. And
through
in mine. Yeah.
my experience, right? Like, I'm not saying that everybody's going to feel this way, but
the subjectivity of love.
Yeah. This is what love means to me and how I choose to express it and what I choose to, deem or call love, right? Like to me, like I said at the beginning of that story.
My story.
Yeah. Like I feel like love is more comprehensible when it's simplified, right?
I agree.
Yeah.
And,
it's like I'm getting fired up.
Right? Yeah.
For the podcast now.
We're doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that just kind of solidifies like how subjective love can be, because even like interpreting how to answer the question was different.
Yeah, as you can see, like our answers were wildly different, right?
Yeah.
And I love that for us because, I mean, not only does it feel good to get like that off my chest, and I'm sure like the same would be said to you, but like also reading each other's answers, comparing them, and then kind of figuring out like, okay, well, like where do we go from here? It was fun.
Yeah,
I
it was.
felt like at the time.
Yeah, me too. Because the reason Kyle suggested we answer that question, I don't remember exactly what like started it, but I remember it was definitely me being uncertain about something. Either I was uncertain about how to like show my affection or show my love, or I don't know, something along those lines. Like I was just uncertain about something. I remember that much. And you were like, okay, like how about to overcome this, like, let's, answer this question for each other. And it fixed my uncertainty. I now had the answers that I didn't really know I needed.
What's the message here? It's okay to like look at love differently than the people that
you most likely will.
You most likely will, and I think that's what's important, is because I feel like a lot of people may think that, like I mentioned earlier on, love is like the end all be all fixer that like will keep a relationship together no matter what. And like I mentioned in the answer, I feel like that narrative is damaging.
You know what I actually never even told you, but like now that I'm thinking about it, another reason I thought it was objective was like, you may have heard this, but like there's like this Bible verse that's like answers like what love is.
I haven't. No.
It's 1 Corinthians chapter 13. And so my dad had us memorize when we were kids.
Really?
So, like I still remember it. Yeah.
I love that for you guys.
So that was like that's just an example of my upbringing. Like with my upbringing, having this Bible verse kind of guide me and lead me to understanding how I should show love, and then how I recognize it's being shown to me was based on this Bible verse. So like that was another reason I thought it was objective, because I was like, if you just do that, like,
right.
Yeah. That's just another way that's just like another difference, right? Like with our upbringing, like how we view it. Like I'm definitely more focused on like an objective type of love, but obviously I recognize there's subjective love because through this experience.
Yeah. I think it's important to know how your partner perceives love. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe me like suggesting the question was a way for me to like get it all out there. As you can see, it was long, but like just really like I wanted you to really understand how I viewed it.
Because for the record, I was uncertain about something, so you're like, let me show you like why you don't need to be uncertain.
Yeah, exactly.
It was very endearing, the gesture,
and likewise.
It's important for couples to have their own views of love, know what those are, and then also know what your partner, how they view love. And talk about it. Talk about so you can find the similarities and differences and base your relationship.
Or just how to accommodate each other.
Yeah. Yeah, and your relationship is based around literally just your definition and my definition.
Yeah, and that's it, right?
That's the parameters of our relationship.
As long as, it's at the core a healthy relationship, it's okay to view love differently than other people.
Yeah, and so we're going to, I guess, move on to another important thing to consider in your relationship about love, and it's how love can change and evolve over time. One of the parameters is how love can change, or how love is influenced based on the intention of somebody.
Right.
So I'm going to go back to that chart that I sent you, where it like compared lust, like, love, and obsession. And what I loved about that chart, I just came across it on Pinterest. So I saw it recently, like being in a relationship with you, but it would have been helpful to me to see it as this, like when I was single or dating, being able to reference the aspects of those emotions that are objective, and like being able to reference those and know what that meant for other people, or like how most people might recognize it, generally speaking. And I think it's important to know that for yourself too, to see, or to kind of like try and understand what emotion somebody else might be having. If someone's telling you they're in love with you, but let's reference a state of mind intensely wants physical contact right now. So like I was someone who took like dating slow. Yeah. And I took like the physical intimacy slow. So if they say they love me, but like pressure me to kind of pick up the pace, I should now be able to recognize, well, I mean, that's not love speaking.
They're lusting for you.
Yeah. Yes. That's lust. Yeah. And I mean, like you can compare and contrast any of these and kind of learn the differences between them, which I think is important because it all relates back to the intention.
Yeah.
And if the intention of a person is not to love you, like in the beginning stages of a relationship, like I don't believe in love at first sight.
No,
like
neither do I. That's lust, or
that's lust.
Lust at first sight.
Yeah.
Let's change that phrase, okay?
And like not to make it gross or not to make it like not to undermine, the feeling of passion or something can be the start of a great relationship.
Right.
It's just acknowledging it is what it is. Like that is, you literally look at someone and you have nothing to base your interest on aside from like their physical appearance. Ultimately, when you first see someone or meet someone, your interest is based on relatively superficial things. That's not terrible, but it's just acknowledging like that's not love.
Yeah.
So yeah, like most people classify that like lust or infatuation. And then as you get to know each other, you probably progress in towards like liking the person, right? You learn things about them that compliment you or challenge you in a way that you like. And then eventually you love the person. Like I think obsession is a dangerous thing. Obsession is kind of just showing like what too much. It's a lack of balance.
Yes, that's a great way to put it, right? If you're always thinking about somebody, if it's affecting your like other aspects of your life,
it's just too much.
Yeah.
And that's like something that people like. That's something like individuals have to work on.
There's different levels of obsession. There has to.
I'm sure, yeah.
Right.
It's all a spectrum. Yeah.
It's all a spectrum, right? Like so, like you may actually be obsessed with somebody if their presence in your life is affecting other aspects of your life, and then the balance is skewed or off, right?
Yeah, or even like the fact that in terms of obsession, like the fact that somebody else becomes like the most important thing to you, overshadowing your boundaries, overshadowing your morals and values.
Yeah.
Like that's not good.
See, that was like a really, dialing back to your answer about like what love is or how we know we're in love. I liked how clear you were in your answer because like you did mention how like, my happiness was your happiness and that it was more of like a unity because without that extra context, and if you just left it at, my definition of love is making you happy.
Yeah.
That you could get trapped into a dangerous game with that, right? Because then if I'm not happy, which is my responsibility at the end of the day, or my contentness. I don't want to say happy necessarily because I don't like personally how there's this chase for happiness, this like societal chase for happiness. Like what like being content is fine with me.
Yeah.
Like I don't need the high of happiness all the time.
That needs to be a podcast episode.
Yeah. But yeah, the fact that you were like, you clarified that, it was more of like a teamwork and that, my happiness wasn't dependent on your love was a great distinction to make because I mean, like I said, you don't want to be that, you don't want to end up in a situation where, you're so much of you is invested in the happiness of the person that you're with because it will affect your life.
Oh yeah. And even like, as I was alluding to, right. It's like everybody is ultimately responsible for their own happiness. So if I'm going to make myself feel responsible for your happiness and some external source is affecting your happiness. Yeah. Like then I'm gonna start feeling terrible about myself. But it's like I don't even have anything to do with that.
And then also on the opposite end, like let's say that were the case, right? Hypothetically, and I recognize in myself that I wasn't happy or I wasn't content, and then I would probably just being the person that I am would start worrying about how that was affecting you. Yeah. Right. You got to kind of be careful where you fall.
Yeah. Ultimately, and
like in that chart.
Yeah. Eventually, in this episode, we're going to talk about like being realistic with understanding and expectations, but that's a good, well, I'm sure we'll reference this again when we get to that. Yeah, it's understanding or it's viewing love from the angle or the lens of intention. I think like it's important that when you go into loving someone, you're like, how can I make this work for me? How do I balance this? How is this like a realistic goal or an attainable goal for the both of us? And having that intention definitely keeps you in the safe space of love and out of that, dangerous, toxic field of obsession. Yeah. And the second type of evolution that love can overgo is how love can change over time. I'm sure there's actually more ways that love can evolve.
Should we touch on, I don't know if it's in your notes there, but should we touch on the different types of love, like love language? I think that'd be a good thing to talk about. Maybe.
We did. I didn't know if that should be like a whole episode in and of itself.
Well, I mean,
actually, no, maybe not.
Maybe not.
Because we really only speak on our own.
Yeah, exactly. So I think identifying your love language can be a smart move. Yeah. Understanding what type of love you value more.
To go into it briefly, I'm sure like love languages have kind of like been everywhere in the
That's true.
sphere. Just recently though, I feel like it's a recent, even though like the book was written a long time ago, like I don't even want to say when I think it was written because it could be totally off, but it was written a while ago.
Yeah.
But there's been a lot of traction recently. I want to say in the last like 10 years, maybe, even outside of romantic ones, like even in like family, because it's just really important to know what your love language is. I actually like figured out or tried to figure out my love languages before I was dating. Before dating you, like we did it together.
Yeah.
It was one of our adventure challenge.
It was.
Adventure book challenges.
Yeah, it was.
But I did do it once before meeting you, and my love language actually changed. What
was it before?
So my primary love language has stayed the same. It's acts of service.
Right.
But what followed after that, like physical touch, was like at the very bottom before. Now it's number 2.
Yeah.
I was just bitter.
That's perfect. That ties in perfectly with this topic at hand because that's an example of how it changed for you.
Over time,
right?
yeah.
Like after experiencing a relationship, it changed and physical touch moved up.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, naturally.
Yeah, everything else kind of stayed the same. But yeah, it was just because I was basing those answers off of family and friends. So naturally, when I was answering those questions, I was going into it being like, well, what do I actually expect them to do? It's an interesting caveat is that you can kind of alter your perception of love based on what are the people actually capable of doing to show your love. For example, like if there are people in your life who are really important to you, like say like I'll talk about my brother, for example. Like my brother and I are really close. In order for him, like if my love languages was initially gifts, right? But we're like teenagers, and it's not like he's gonna like buy me everything I want. Like ultimately, I did kind of alter my, not that like gift giving was, I don't think ever really, no, actually that's not true. I think as a kid, gift giving was pretty big. I love getting gifts. I love getting toys. I love, being bought things. So it's very materialistic as a child.
Yeah.
But yeah, ultimately I had to realize like Zach can't show me he loves me by buying me stuff because that's just he's not capable of doing that.
Yeah.
So I had to like alter my interpretation of his love based on like what he was actually capable of doing. So I didn't expect my friends and my parents and everyone to just be like, all cuddly and yeah. So in terms of like physical touch, that was at the very bottom because I was like, I don't really expect anyone to do that. Because it'd be weird.
No, I would have perceived it the same way.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't somebody who was very physical, even with my family. Like we don't hug each other.
Yeah.
Right? Unless we do more now.
Yeah.
But growing up, like, no, it wasn't a thing.
Yeah, I didn't hug like barely anyone. Like I started doing it more now.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, when I was younger, like I didn't really hug anyone.
But then like experiencing like, the relationship side of life, and I took the test and physical touch was my number one. Mm-hmm. And I think like our love languages actually, they work out really well, right?
Because well together, yeah.
I mean, as I mentioned in my answer earlier, I believe that the only true form of love is unconditional love.
Yeah.
So like through my actions. So which is perfect because I love when I can do stuff for you or like perform acts of service because I'm not looking for anything in return. On the opposite side, like us on the couch watching a movie together kind of satisfies my love language, right? Like,
yeah.
Because we're close, intimate.
Yeah. Close proximity.
Yeah. This is also satisfying my love language right now.
I mean, it's also acknowledging like your physical touch is also it's like that's also a spectrum, right? Like it can be just really like casual things, but they mean a lot to somebody.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I was missing. I was missing how like a casual hug when we greet each other, how meaningful that can be. So that's something I definitely learned being in a relationship.
Yeah. Get the warm and fuzzies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's the love languages are acts of service, physical touch, quality time, words of affirmation, and gifts.
Gifts. Yeah. What was my lowest? I wonder. I think gift giving.
I think it was gift giving.
Yeah. And then acts of service.
No, it was acts of service because I remember thinking that that's great.
Oh, because it was on the end. Yeah.
The reason like acts of service, if someone's love language is acts of service, it means that you're doing things for me that I don't want to do myself.
Yeah.
So it's like, if I don't want to do it myself, like probably I don't want to do it for anybody else. Like I will. It's just, it's effort.
Yeah. Could you imagine my love language was acts of service? And I just didn't want to take out the trash.
Yeah. Like, and then I'd be like, well, I guess.
You'd struggle with that one.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I mean. Like our love languages are
it works
compatible.
Out. It does work out well. I think so. Yeah.
Because like acts of service is that one where it's like, okay, well, there's obviously things I don't want to do. So it's wonderful when there's someone who loves you enough to do them for you. But then also like with like physical touch being my second one, I'm able to very regularly satisfy your love language.
And also get value out of yourself.
It's a win-win.
Right? It's a win-win.
Yeah. I think quality time was next for both of us. I feel like words of affirmation and gift giving was our lowest, but I don't really remember which one was lowest for you.
I think for me, off of memory, I think it went physical touch, quality time, words of affirmation, gift giving, and then acts of service.
Yeah. And I think maybe my lowest was gift giving, and then maybe words of affirmation was above that. I don't know exactly. I mainly focus on the top three. Because also they give you, depending on the test you do, they'll give you like percentages or like the amount or like how prevalent that love language is for you.
Yeah.
So like my top two were like very prevalent, but like my lower ones were like not that prevalent.
Right.
So eventually I was like, well, I mean, not only are they my lowest, but like they're not even like that prevalent in my expression or understanding of love. Yeah. So ultimately, like understanding your love language, I mean, and that's a very good way to measure or observe how love might be changing for you over time, your understanding of it, your perspective of it, and then also how being in a relationship can change your love language. But also like another thing that's important to note, and this is also something that's been talked about in the relationship sphere, and it's key to understanding relationships. And like I still feel like it's this thing that everybody kind of knows or has heard of, but it's really hard to implement or it's hard to accept, and that's how love can change over time. So there's two types of love. So in the initial phases, it's called passionate love. And then over time, you experience companionate love or compassionate love. Have you heard this before?
No.
Okay.
Is it either or?
No, the latter is like kind of interchangeable.
Okay.
So I learned about this in psychology, but again, at this point, it's like, people have written books on it and
enlighten us, please.
Yeah, it's talked about pretty well. So yeah, I'll explain it in as generally as I can. So essentially, it's the passionate love you feel at the beginning. We've talked about this, right? Like how when you first meet someone, like just vibes are high. You want to see this person all the time. You want to spend time with them like as much as you possibly can. Their presence like kind of always makes you happy or like in a positive mood.
Yeah.
Because
it's
you're
a rush
excited.
of dopamine. Right?
Yeah. So that is the presence of like a lot of passion in a relationship. Even in like relationships where like you can't keep your hands off each other at that point. It's like this mingling of like lust and love together. Because obviously like the lust is still very prevalent. You're also like don't really know that much about the person you're seeing or falling in love with at this point.
So it's almost like you're kind of romanticizing what they could be.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so like it's that very strong feeling. We've talked about this before. A lot of it is fueled by like adrenaline from just this new experience, being with this new person, the novelty of the situation, and then also driven by just like infatuation and lust. It's driven by being able to romanticize a person because you don't know them that well. That's like what happens when you enter a relationship. Yeah. Also like the honeymoon phase. The honeymoon phase is essentially when you're experiencing the passionate love. But over time, you kind of enter that feeling like eventually kind of plateaus. And so you enter what's called compassionate love or companionate love. And so essentially it's like you're being in the relationship like might be less exciting, but it's not like less fulfilling. It's understanding that like just the absence of the excitement or the passion or not having it like constantly. Some people might perceive that as a bad thing, like they're falling out of love.
It's funny you mentioned that because I feel like going to our relationship, I was going in with the mindset that I wasn't going to romanticize this experience. Mm-hmm. I've done that in the past. I feel like you can just kind of get yourself into a weird spot mentally by doing that.
Yeah.
Because you're making these not necessarily unrealistic, but you're making these assumptions or these predictions or setting these like expectations in your mind about somebody or how it could go.
Yeah.
And then when it doesn't go, like when it doesn't turn out that way, it's like, I mean, in my case, I kind of just felt like stupid.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So going to this one, I was like, aware of that. And I was like, I'm just gonna, and that was like another reason why I was so set on setting boundaries really quickly, was because I wanted to make sure that
you're right.
We took it at a pace that was realistic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess in our case, like we were able to learn from our mistakes. I think though, the experience that solidified this in my mind was an experience I had where I was talking to somebody, and it was probably the first time I had very like endearing conversation on Bumble. And we would talk for like hours, and there would always be like the good morning and then the good night, and we would talk for hours.
Yeah.
Constant back and forth. And that to me felt so it started off being like a wonderful experience. And what happened was eventually that burnt out when reality set in. And the reason that happened was because of how unrealistic it was. I've referenced this experience before. It was just unrealistic to talk that much. And then when you took that away from what we were trying to do, like we were trying to build a relationship, but when you removed the ability to talk all the time and make each other feel special all the time, when you removed that, there wasn't really much there.
Yeah.
And that was like, I was kind of the one who, actually, no, I'm not going to make that assumption. I don't know, because there was a little bit of back and forth towards the end of it where he had to take a step back and focus on stuff. And then I had to take a step back because I was doing school. And then eventually we just lost it. And it's just an indication of how, in order to make a relationship work, you have to put in work. And neither of us were doing it. And so kind of like we just lost we lost feeling.
I was thinking about, you mentioned like the, early on you guys were doing the whole like good night, good morning routine. We didn't do that right away.
No, not right away.
We like that. It was a while before I remember. And I think I actually had this like moment where I think it was like the first time I ever wished you good night, which was not at the beginning.
No, I think we actually started dating. Like it was after we started dating in person, I think.
Yes.
I think that's when we started doing it.
But anyway, I remember thinking we hadn't done it. Like I wasn't doing the everyday, like good morning, good night. I am now, obviously, but there was a moment in time where because I believe I was the one who initiated it.
I think so, yeah.
And I had like wished you a good night one night. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to be probably doing this like every day now for as long as we're together. I don't know why that was relevant, but I just like, I remember I had a moment where I was thinking about, I'm like, oh, this might be the very first time of a lifetime of me saying goodnight to her.
That's actually really cute. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause personally, I'm not a fan of doing that. Like stuff too
off
early.
The jump. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the whole good night, good morning. I just feel like it comes off like kind of like, it's nice.
It's not, it doesn't, it feels like it means a lot, but it doesn't. That's what I learned.
Too early.
Yeah. My experience was, it felt like it meant a lot, but like, obviously at the end of the day, like it didn't hold any weight.
When you do that really early on, it's like an attempt to present yourself in that role of like being the significant other. Like, oh, like I'm going to be somebody that's like going to do this all the time. Right. But
it's setting an expectation. And to be fair,
I don't think you should do that right off the gate. Like I think it's a little much. Maybe that's just my perception. Maybe I'm the asshole here.
I mean,
you can let me know in the comments.
To be fair, I really value that for us. So maybe that's, I mean, I'm sure you do too. I'm not saying you don't, but.
No, I do. But I value it because we did not do it, right? Like, it's not like when we first started talking, I was like, okay, have a good night. Like, talk to you in the morning. Like, nah, that wasn't me. Like, I just.
I was playing hard to get.
And that's why I think, like, I remember, like, it's such a distinct memory when I started it.
That is a good point, yeah.
Because I remember thinking that, like, this, not only was this something that I might be doing.
Did you never do that?
No, I did.
Okay, at one point you did.
But I did.
Yeah, like
wait, I actually don't know if I did. I think it might have been like with you, it might have been like the consistent thing, the first consistent like experience I've had with that. But I think I kind of viewed it as kind of corny before.
I'll give you that. It's kind of corny. I'm gonna give like a little more context. Like the guy was really emotional. Like I've referenced him before, even when talking to you and kind of like my own experiences.
Yeah,
he was a very sentimental, emotional, and romantic person. I just felt special. But again, it's an illusion.
because he'll do that with anybody.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, again, am I the asshole here? Like, I don't know.
No, I don't know.
I'm not doing that to somebody I start to talk to on the first night of interacting with them.
Yeah. But have you had that where it's like a back and forth conversation? So essentially, maybe the reason it came up so early was because we would talk mostly at night, and then we would literally have to cut off the conversation because it was getting too late.
So yeah, that's why I can understand. You're literally like talking to each other up until the point you want to sleep.
And then I guess the good morning, that would be just a sentimental, sentiment for no reason.
Even prior to us being in a relationship, like my communication style was very broken up when it came to dating, especially messaging.
Yeah.
I would go hours. I wouldn't commit to having, obviously, to say goodnight to somebody.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I just read a message, and if I felt like I just didn't have the energy or time to formulate, because like that was another thing about my take on messaging. I mean, we're kind of going back into the online dating sphere here, but and even with you, I don't want to, if I don't have time to formulate a thought out response to what you said, I'm going to wait until I have that time.
Yeah. Like that. Yeah. So I guess your messaging style has been consistent.
Yeah. But I mean, it's different. Obviously it's different now, right? I feel like we're both more relaxed.
Okay. Yeah. So my communication style has definitely changed over time. Like so that was just somebody I was talking to on the app for like maybe a couple weeks, or like months on and off. It was a back and forth situation. But even like the last guy I like actively dated, like we didn't do that. We would only say goodnight if we were talking at night and like someone was going to bed, then we would say goodnight. But like in the morning, like never. There are things people do at the beginning which feel great and it feels like it means a lot, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
And when you lose that, or when more taxing things happen in your relationship, and like saying good morning and good night is not enough.
Yeah.
Like the feel good of that is not enough. That's when you kind of now have to put in some work. There's also this idea of like when you get comfortable with someone, like people kind of reference it as like you lose the magic or the honeymoon phase is over. And a lot of people kind of equate that to like just, falling out of love. But like what psychologists and, relationship experts will say is that it's not an absence of love, or you're not falling out of love. You're just falling into the next phase of it, which is companion or compassionate love. And it's just understanding that like in the entire duration of your relationship, you are not going to have like consistent moments of passion. It's not going to be this constant like high. Eventually you're going to fall into like this plateau or this like kind of just like normalcy.
Yeah.
It's just not exciting.
Yeah.
But it's learning to appreciate and value that. The Friends episode, which we've actually referenced this for ourselves before, but when Monica and Chandler, or when Phoebe's dating the cop and Monica and Chandler, or Monica's watching them go through this exciting phase.
Oh yeah. The honeymoon phase of a new relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Monica's kind of just like, like we're not the hot couple, this hot couple anymore. They like can't keep our hands off each other. And then Chandler was trying to, explain to her that he values what they have more than what they had initially. So it's honestly just learning how to value it and learning the importance of it, being able to appreciate it for what it is.
Yes.
That's the companion or the compassionate love. And it's just understanding and recognizing it.
All right, let's move on to the final topic.
Yeah. So to summarize, I mean, understanding that love will look different as your relationship progresses and kind of anticipating it, like you said, because it will, it happens for everybody. And it's just important to kind of approach your relationship from the perspective of just because this is gone doesn't mean my relationship's over. Just because we're not doing this anymore doesn't mean like you're not in love anymore. And then also like what we want to like move on to next is we've kind of alluded to this before, but is love enough? And so it's understanding the function and the purpose of love in a relationship, what it does for your relationship, but also knowing that it's not like this like all encompassing concept for your relationship.
It's not a magic potion.
No, it doesn't do everything for you.
No.
Yeah. I mean, like, as you were saying, even in your answer to the question that you'd asked, you discussed how there was expressions or acts of love. So the emotion itself was not enough. Like you have to put it out into the world, right? You have to express it for other people.
Yeah.
In order for it to work. Yeah.
Or else how do you validate it?
Yeah. And I think that's, it seems obvious to say, but I think like when people get comfortable, like
I don't think it necessarily is for people. I mean, I don't know if it was for me. That was something that I struggled with before is like, I don't know how to explain to somebody that I love them. I really just don't know how to do it. Right. Yeah. So formulating that answer and that's why like I recommended, you should do this, is because it actually helped me understand and express myself to you.
Yeah.
Who is like the most important person who needs to know that, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
But so like there's the feeling alone that you have is not enough, right? There is like you express it through actions, you express it through your
even words, right? Because sometimes saying it, like I've heard this, right? Like in relationships where or even like any relationship, not even romantic ones, like to my parents, like I forget to tell them I love them, even though I obviously do. They're my parents, but it's just because I've been with my parents for like 27 years. Eventually you kind of just get used to it.
Yes.
So yeah, obviously I love you. Like, why do I have to keep saying it, or why do I have to tell you? But it's nice.
It is nice.
It's nice to tell people. And and again, like with the absence of the words, like the feeling doesn't go away for me, but it's like, am I communicating it to somebody? And like, no, you're not. So without actions, without words, without any way of, right. And then like, I guess that goes back to the love languages. Like those 5 love languages are pretty universal ways of expressing love, but ultimately it's saying that you have to do them. Whatever your love language is, or the person you're trying to express your love to, whatever their love language is, you have to do it, because the emotion enough is not going to make itself known.
Yes. Yeah.
And then like, in addition to whether love is enough or not, it's having those realistic understanding and expectations.
How can people amend their expectations to be more realistic? So
essentially you've got to ask yourself, what is an expression of love that can be maintained in this relationship, right? Because if your expression of love is based on gift giving, how often do you need to be given a gift? Like, it's like, are smaller expressions of love more realistic, or big grand ones?
Right.
Like, and if you put a lot of weight on the big grand expressions, right? Like fancy dinners or, elaborate gifts, you're limiting yourself to how often you get to feel loved by someone. Like I'm generally not a very materialistic person anymore. I always make this joke that I went to a liberal university and I took one econ class, and now I'm just anti-capitalist. I don't believe in consumerism. I think it's stupid, but yeah, I'm not a materialistic person, but like, even if I was, like, I feel like that's something I should do for myself, because if I was going to link that to feeling loved, it's like, I'm just limiting myself to how often I can feel loved by someone.
Yeah. A small scale example of an act of service love would be taking out the trash every Wednesday, or whatever your trash day is. But right?
Yeah, because
I'm not taking it for granted, right?
Yeah.
Like appreciating it every time.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing too. I used to feel like a jerk that my love language was act of service. So it's like, oh, like, do things for me. Like, I feel like that was but it's also acknowledging that when people do things for me, like, it means a lot.
It does. Yeah.
Like, when your love language is act of service, you don't take it for granted.
No.
Because because it is really important to you.
Yeah.
In order to satisfy love for you on such a large scale. Also, I'm going to reference your answer that you were saying earlier, is like things like respect, loyalty, like kindness. Like, there's so many things that go into a relationship that make it a loving relationship.
Yeah.
So for example, it's like you can love someone but like still cheat on them, right?
Right.
And it's like, I still loved you, I just made a mistake, is essentially what people
will say, right? That's why I wanted to specify my answer, that a big part of loving for me, or love to me, is maintaining respect. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Because people make a lot of mistakes or they make a lot of choices because they don't care. They don't, to themselves, they don't let those actions carry the weight of expressing love, essentially.
Yeah. Or they feel so secure in their love that like it can't be broken by terrible acts.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, but I still love you.
Yeah.
Even though I cheated on you.
Yeah, exactly. And that might be true. Like, you might still be.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah, you will love someone. It's just like, it doesn't matter to the person.
Right.
Because you didn't show it.
Yeah. It's not like a magic phrase where you can wave your wand and it just makes the situation better.
Or even on like a more, even on a smaller scale, essentially, it's like when you're in like the early phases of a relationship and you may have said like you love someone for the first few times, but then you like ghost because something happened or you're not communicating properly, whatever. You're hurting the person essentially because you'd set this standard and now you're not meeting the standard. Again, like you might still love the person, but like you need to put in the work and you need to put in the words and the actions that actually carry weight. So I guess that's enough for all I have written down here is realistic understanding and expectations. The emotion of love is actually only a small part of a loving relationship, and the emotion needs to be followed up by actions that show the emotion.
I think that's a good summary.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So in closing, what do we want to summarize?
So like from the beginning, it's like we want to be aware of what love looks like and what love doesn't look like.
Yeah.
Because knowing that for yourself helps you to realistically and rationally perceive when you are being shown love and not just your romanticized ideal version of it.
Right.
But then it also helps you express it to other people, which is important. So it works both ways. And the love can look differently to both people in the relationship. So it's learning that you see it one way, your significant other sees it another way. Like we were talking about, you should definitely communicate that. And then so both parties can understand it in the context of your relationship. It's also important, I think, I don't know if we talked about this earlier on, but it's important. It really helps to be in a relationship with someone whose perception of love is still very similar to yours. Because even though Kyle and I had this like a bit of a back and forth where, you know, you thought it was subjective, I thought it was objective. Had I not Googled it, like there might have been like, I'm not going to lie, I felt a little weird. I was like, how did we not discuss this before? How did we not realize, not that it really changes much in my opinion.
Well, I think from a psychology background, like you wanted to, like what stood out to you was the fact that it was a chemical reaction or like something. When it comes to love, there's a reaction.
There is something universal about it.
Yeah. And I think that's what you were leaning on, right? Was the fact that like people experience it neurologically, similarly.
Yeah.
Right. And then I guess my argument was that, yeah, but you can perceive and then interpret that reaction that's happening in your mind or your brain in a different way.
Which is true. Yeah.
And because I felt like that was evident in the way that we answered that question, right? Because although the values of what we were saying, I think resonate for both of us, the way we answered it was very different.
It's because our answers were so similar too that I don't think I paid enough attention to the subjectivity of it. Like they were different, but they were similar enough that I was like, yeah, ultimately.
Yeah, like valuing respect, communicate. Like, yeah, of course, like actions.
And then love language is another example of how they're subjective. But yeah, essentially, like if Kyle and I didn't like communicate what we meant by that, I might have like had a bit of a scare. I was like, oh my God, like, you know, we don't perceive love the same way. Like that's scary, but like I figured out we do. It's fine.
I love knowing that you, not in like a enjoyment way, but like it's funny when I hear you have these like moments of panic almost, and I'm like over here just like cool as a cucumber, like not worried at all. When we disagree, I just think that's normal. Like, of course, like of course we're gonna disagree at points. Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest. Like it always, but this is like with me with everybody. It's because I don't like conflict and I'm not confrontational.
Yeah.
Disagreement immediately, like it makes me panic, but then I just like rationalize it, and that's like it's fine. It's, you know, it happens.
Right.
But no, yeah. So I almost always get like a sense of panic of like, yeah. And then I just, you know, we talk our way through it and we're fine.
Of course, that's what we do.
That's what we do. It's aggressive. But yeah, I think we covered it. We covered all the things.
Yes,
all the things.
We did. We covered all the things.
Love is like a very broad topic.
It is. Yeah, you could dive into so much.
Yeah,
so much.
We definitely just skimmed the surface here, but I think we covered all of especially the things that pertain to the different like phases in life of being single in a relationship, in a committed relationship or married.
Yeah.
I think like the things that we talked about like are important to like regardless of what phase you are in life.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end. Thanks for listening and watching. If you're on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, get into the comments and let us know if there's anything we should talk about, that any suggestions that you might have. I think that would be really fun for us to get like audience or viewer interaction.
Yeah, even like questions.
Questions would be awesome.
Yeah,
we could cover those. Like maybe have like a segment on each episode where we answer questions.
Yeah, that'd be really good.
So down below if you have the questions. With that said, we're signing off. We love your socks.
Yep.
And that's a wrap.
I panicked.
That was good.